Hi, everybody. Thank you for coming today to our live stream. My name is Sam Becker. I am the product marketing manager here at Fulcrum. I am joined by our CEO, Sunny Han, and our director of product, Alex Troesch. Today, Sunny is going to be walking us through the current state of manufacturing software, and Alex is going to be giving you a look into Fulcrum and how we help small manufacturers solve some of their common shop issues. So we'll have some time at the end for questions. So if you have questions throughout today's live stream, feel free to drop them in the chat and we will be addressing those towards the end. That's all I have. So I'm going to turn it over to Sunny to go ahead and get started.
Thank you, Sam. Welcome everybody to our first ever live stream here at Fulcrum. I'm excited to tell everybody about all the hard work we've been doing over the last 7.5 years. 5 of those years flying all around the country, visiting manufacturers to learn what the core problems are, and 2.5 incredibly intense years of building out the best product on the market for mid-market manufacturers. I'm going to walk you through our journey, the problems that we discovered, the philosophies we developed, our vision, and then I'll turn it over to Alex to show you a bit about the product. But here at Fulcrum, we fundamentally believe that what we're doing is that we're supporting the most important industry on earth. We believe that everything that exists that is useful for humans either is manufactured or relies on something that's manufactured. And we think that supporting that part of our economy and of our society is the best way that we can use our talents and our efforts to make an impactful mark on the future of how we advance as a civilization. Our journey to where we are today as a company, as Fulcrum and as a product, wasn't exactly linear. When we first started out, we wanted to build something very small for our customers just to be able to provide some value, build a small business, and be really grateful for whatever opportunities came our way. When we started doing this, however, we found that these legacy systems that are built on architecture from 20, 30, 40 years ago were really, really difficult to integrate with. And for those of you that run manufacturing shops, you probably have experienced this many times throughout the last 2, 3, 4, 5 decades. That type of difficulty to implement comes from a lot of different sources. It comes from the way that the industry has evolved. It's come from the way that the manufacturing users have evolved with it. And fundamentally, it comes from a disconnect between the progress we've made as a civilization in technology outside of manufacturing and the way that we've tried to innovate from within manufacturing. For us, we feel an immense amount of gratitude for the work that's come before us, for the foundations that have been laid by some of these companies that we're working really hard to innovate on top of. We don't believe that manufacturing could be what it is today without the efforts that they put forth 20, 30, 40 years ago. But we also believe that without significant quantum leap in the way that we support manufacturing, we're going to continue to have diminishing returns in putting effort into making manufacturing better. As we work with these legacy systems, we understood now that we needed to build something larger, maybe an entire digital job tracker, or maybe a different type of scheduling system, or maybe a different quoting engine. And we built many different versions of each one of those, and our customers loved them. And we got really great feedback from prospects that weren't customers yet, but still a core issue existed. Nobody wanted this software without it integrating with their existing systems. Nobody wanted to do all the data entry that was necessary to put everything in every single day, only to dump it out to be visualized somewhere else. So we went even one step further. We built semi-custom software that allowed us to deploy our product in a modular way that sometimes integrated and sometimes didn't. But this created a huge mess of understanding our customers' existing businesses and trying to replicate them. What we found is that our customers actually didn't want us to just copy their bad behaviors from the past. What they really wanted was an understanding of how they could use modern technology to change their business for the better, to stay competitive, and to continue to evolve with the world. We tried working with channel partners, with integrator partners, with implementation partners, and we realized that they just had too much power over us, that they were sitting in between us and our customers. And instead of working directly with our customers, we started working with them and treating them as our customers. And the ideas that we had got worse and worse and worse and worse. And finally, after many, many, many years of traveling around and doing a lot of work, we finally bit the bullet. And 2.5 years ago, almost 3 years ago, we hunkered down and built the entire platform that we now call Fulcrum. And it's with this product that we started to build then, that we've been building ever since, that we were able to discover something that both people wanted, that actually measurably improved their business and was a quantum step forward from what the technologies of the present are. And from that, we raised a round of venture capital funding. We raised another round about a year and a half ago, that we haven't even announced yet. And really what that's allowed us to do, it's allowed us to take tens of millions of dollars and hire the best talent we could find out there to work on this problem of manufacturing operation software in a way that no one really has before. The level of professionalism and the level of skill and intellect and talent and empathy that we've assembled at Fulcrum is in a class of its own. And what it results in is a product that is fundamentally different in how it's built. That's better and it's different, and it's built with the promise that it will continue to get better and be different for our end users for as long as we exist. Generating that end user happiness is something that the entire industry has overlooked. Historically, software was sold to business owners that wanted control over their companies and measurements of their systems, and the end users were seen as a liability, as a question mark as to how we were going to get them to do the things we wanted them to do. How do we train them? How do we force them to follow a series of unintuitive and strange rules just to be able to transact and interact with the systems? I think both accidentally and a few strokes of luck and a little bit of genius, we really started to focus on what the end user wants. And generating that end user happiness is really what allows our product to be what it is. Because without that interaction, none of the data, none of the liveness, none of the unique, innovative, new things that we do would be possible. While we've made some mistakes here and there, while we've had really talented people that have come on board that just didn't fit our culture, we've kept the commitment to continue to make sure that we put our people first, that having the right group of people is the correct strategy in developing the best product to generate whatever future profits we need to generate. Today and going forward, you'll see us everywhere in the marketplace. We'll be telling our story online. We'll be telling our story in person. We're finally ready to get out of stealth mode, finally ready for the world to see all the hard work that we've done over the last 7.5 years. The key recipe for this magic that we've created, that we're ready to share with everyone, is that we have 3 ingredients that seem to matter the most in generating a level of magic that is significantly above what anyone else has been able to do. The first is to build a platform that's reliable, that allows us to interact with other platforms, that allows it to be cloud native, that allows it to continue to innovate, and allows us to continue to develop new features at an extremely rapid pace. This makes innovation much easier, not just today, but even when we continue to triple and triple and triple in size as we go forward. The second is to determine the 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 killer features that we can build to really take advantage of this platform that we built. Some of these might be a digital paperless job traveler that rests in a computer system instead of on pieces of paper, that allows for live communication between shop floor operators and the people that manage production. It's in a scheduler that allows for an easy usage and solving of a constant puzzle and what operation do you do when to get what job out as quickly as possible. It's the magic of computing automatically what you should buy from which vendor at what time, or what you should build for your stock components if you have them, to make sure that you never run out of your critical subcomponents that allow you to deliver on time. It's being able to forecast what the pricing model should be to generate what margins and to help you job cost automatically. Each and every one of those represents an effort that we've made to build something that's never existed in this way in the marketplace and plug it into our platform. And lastly, the most important thing, the thing that took us the longest time to realize, is the grease. The customer service that responds within a day, that sometimes almost immediately, that walks you through the process of implementing software, that does it with extremely talented folks instead of trying to squeeze every dollar of margin out of a billable hour. We really believe that that's our primary differentiator. The product and the killer features allow us to do it, but that service, that implementation, doing it ourselves, automating it, not trying to run a business where we make money off of consulting, but instead a business where our customers' interests are aligned with our own. That's really where that last step needed to fall in. And with that, we're able to create a system that delivers a functionality of 8 different, otherwise somewhat to quite disconnected subsystems into one coherent platform that focuses primarily on improving the daily lives of manufacturers. After we studied it, we realized that this problem is way larger than we thought. That even though the software industry itself is fairly small, it's pretty big, it's $24 billion in size globally, the number of dollars that are spent on manufacturing software is extremely skewed towards services, towards people writing reports at $200 an hour, or answering support calls at $150 an hour, or implementing software at $300 an hour, or strategizing on how to mold this Lego set of a semi-custom system to the customer's businesses, or needing to re-implement it as the manufacturer's businesses change. All of this carrying cost of deploying and setting up software, that's where all the dollars spent are going. A very small portion of that actually goes to the companies that make the product themselves. And of that, less than 25% is spent on research and development. And of the research and development, 80% of it is spent making partners happy, and only 20% of it is spent maintaining, or sometimes, hopefully, advancing the product itself. And again, I want to call back to a comment I made earlier. I don't believe that this was the wrong move for how manufacturing software existed in the past. Starting out in the 1970s and 1980s, we didn't have the internet. We didn't have distributed and decentralized computing networks. The technology we have now just simply didn't exist back then. And to the entire industry's credit, manufacturing was the first sector to really double down on computer software, computer-controlled manufacturing. All of these things were sponsored and pioneered by manufacturing. And all of the systems and processes and procedures developed then. It developed at a time when it was really difficult for people to use computers. They didn't know they existed. They didn't have them in their homes. They certainly didn't have them in their pockets. And this was the only way for the industry to exist. And we've reaped a huge amount of benefit as a civilization working with these systems. I can't think of a different way that it could have been done, but I also firmly believe this is not the path forward. The path forward is going to react to the times that we have today. The evolution of our global economy and our society is such that things are changing on an annual basis, not on a 10-year basis. That 5-year forecasts become increasingly harder to make accurately, that we need to start innovating and developing and advancing on a monthly basis, on a quarterly basis, on an annual basis. And in order to do this, we have to make sure that we develop systems where the lion's share of the dollar spent go to maintaining and, most importantly, continuing to improve those systems that support the very data structures and critical operations of every manufacturer that's out there. In order to do that, we have to make sure that the support we give to our customers doesn't just stop at the time that they launch, that we're as generous with our time and as generous with our training and as generous with our help at every step of the way for years and years and years to come. And in order to do that and not charge our customers a cent for that support, we have to make sure that our software is robust and strong enough that it gives that experience. Because we don't make any money off of that support, we have no incentive to not solve even very small bugs, sometimes within a day of when they're found. What this has resulted in is probably the most valuable resource we have outside of the people that work here. It's happy users and happy customers that not only see what we're trying to do, but believe in the benefit that it is going to provide and it currently provides. It's in the users that span from finance to production to shop floor operators to receiving and inventory and shipping. The entire company brought together in one singular experience that revolves around a user interface that makes our users feel powerful instead of stupid, that makes them feel safe instead of afraid, that makes them understand what's going on instead of need to get a 3-ring binder and look up a standard operating procedure to proceed forward. That is the type of teamwork and the type of culture that I believe the most successful manufacturers of the next 20 years will have to have. And it's an advancement and a change from the last 20 years, but it's one that's ready to happen now and one that's already happening, most of all within the customers that we're able to support every single day. I wanted to give a chance for everybody to understand that all of the lines connecting to us are open. You can email anybody here at any point in time. We'll leave this up at the end of the live stream as well as we're doing the question and answer. But please reach out to Alex, reach out to me, reach out to Sam, anyone that you can find on LinkedIn, on email. Our job every single day is to take care of our team and to take care of our customers, to listen to people as they give us feedback, because whatever you tell us today influences and informs the decisions that lead us to continuously delighting and exciting and amazing the customers that we've found and are going to continue to grow into. Alex is going to take some time to show you the product and dive deep into some of the features that are really exciting, some of those killer features I mentioned earlier, and we'll have some time for question and answers at the end. Alex.
Great. Yeah, so I'm going to dive into the product a little bit, like Sunny said, get into a little bit more of the details. A couple of things before I jump into that. Sunny hit on these, but we really do have a focus on really great design on the end users and making something that's both easy to use but also really robust. And so, yeah, I hope that comes across in a couple of things that we'll demo here. The other thing I'll mention is I'm narrowing it to just a couple areas of the application, mostly related to production, but we do a lot outside of this. We do everything from quoting all the way to invoicing, shipping, receiving, inventory management, a lot of different types of things that we won't cover all of it. So with that, I will share my screen here in a second and jump in. So all right. Okay, great. So a couple of themes that we'll kind of hit on as we go through these. One is that concept of live data to actually inform decisions and kind of do something with the data that we're actually capturing. And then the other is really the power of this tool as something that can really react and change to new information. And so the first kind of scenario I'll get into a little bit is really about how we use that live data within Fulcrum and how we take some of that information that we're getting from the shop floor and make sure that's available to everyone to provide sort of this transparency across the organization, across teams. So in this example, I just pulled up a job that's in the system. You'll notice kind of as I go through this, all of this is space themed. So in this particular job, we have a Mars rover that we're making, kind of to orient you on the page a little bit. So this is a job for our Mars rover. There's some estimated, labor and machine material cost kind of along the top. And then some key data here, we can add, drawings, we can add some different things like 3D renderings and kind of keep all of those things digitally sort of stored. And then a really key piece of data for us here on the job is going to be essentially the bill of materials and the routing. So what do we need, how much, what are the steps needed to produce this? And in this particular example, there's a lot of different steps. These bubbles here are sort of our operation steps, and there's a large sort of hierarchy of things needed to be built into subcomponents and things here. So this is, all kind of set up already in this example. So we have a job, it has a due date, it's kind of ready to go. I've already scheduled it. And so we'll jump into what this view looks like for someone on the shop team. This is going to be more for getting the job going and sort of set up and released to the floor. But our view of that for the team who's actually working with this job on the shop floor is going to be this view. And so this is actually usually used on tablets, so you can kind of walk around with it. And I just jumped into the first, one particular operation here, a cutting step for this chassis, which is just sort of a piece of our piece of our Mars rover. But this will give that shop team a couple of tools, basically to move a lot of what's happening in that paper onto into their actual tablet. So we have 3D renderings, we can have drawings, we have work instructions, all of those things here. This is where we'll start to capture actual time or how many pieces we've actually finished. This will give us an understanding of current inventory levels, as well as where inventory is. So we can do some inventory sort of picking here in real time, and then also start to do different quality control checks and stuff, and measure those kind of as we go. So we're doing a drawing review. We're doing some measurements in this example as we go. It's giving me kind of feedback that I'm out of tolerance on that particular measurement. And then you can also add, notes and things too. So I can say, there was a problem with drilling some sort of hole, just obviously making this up, but you can start to add some notes for the rest of the team. And so this spot is both intended to provide a lot of value for the team who's actually, doing the work in the day-to-day. But by capturing this information, we also want to feed it back into the rest of the organization so you can use it to make other decisions. And so while all of that's happening, there's other spots in the application we can kind of see that. So I just pulled up and switched to now another report. And so this is what we call real-time operations view. This, is helpful obviously for like people who may be in the office, but also just maybe the rest of the shop team to kind of have up and see what's happening right now on the shop floor. So in this example, I can see I only have one thing running. It's what I just started. It kind of shows me who started it. So it was me, the job, kind of how far along we have progressed. So we're only about 19% of the way through this particular cutting operation. And I also just see a list of everything else that's sort of expected to be done right now or has recently finished. So in this example, we've already done a lot of the work already. So a lot of things are already actually completed. The other spot that this will tie more information back into is actually on the schedule. So our schedule will get into more of the logic and orienting a little bit around kind of how our schedule runs and what some of these pieces are. But in this example, I can see already, all right, well, this is what I had scheduled on the bandsaw today. This is currently running. This is kind of ready to go. And then the kind of last key place that starts to feed all this real information sort of back for decision-making purposes is onto the job itself. So this is that same jobs page, but you'll notice that it's starting to actually fill in with some of that actual information that's being captured from the shop floor in the scenario. So we have a little bit of labor cost that's starting to add up here. We have a little bit of material cost from that material that I actually picked. And then we'll also start to get more information from the shop floor in the form of, these like notes. So I, have a note here. I can, say something back. We can start to look at, have we scrapped anything in this case? No, we can see, the quality information that we have collected so far. I can see I was out of tolerance already on this one, particular point. And then you can even, go a level deeper than this. So this will kind of show us, we haven't started anything yet on the suspension assembly section of this. Nothing is really started here. We know that we started the chassis. We're about 29% of the way through at this point. Haven't started anything here yet, and can kind of see our materials also on this side here. So there's some materials we haven't even ordered yet. There's some that we have, picked and used. So, a common way or, that we see people using this information is actually when customers may call and want to make a change order or something like that. So in this particular example, if I go back to our jobs main page here, say, and this customer was Mars X. They kind of called, asked like, hey, we want to make a change to something. How far along are you guys on this? You can quickly pull up that job. Sales team members can have access to this. Anyone can have access to this, see how far along the job is, and then again, go that level deeper and see, okay, well, I know we haven't done anything yet in the suspension or, the final assembly. Like there's potentially changes that could be, still made here and help facilitate those conversations on the fly. So that's kind of one very sort of narrow, sort of specific example of how we're pulling that data and trying to use it in different places around the rest of the system, rather than just gathering that at the end and using it in like a report. We really want to try and feed you as much information as possible so you can actually make decisions and take actions on things before the job is actually done. So the next scenario I'll kind of jump into and transition to is going to be a little bit more about scheduling and the Fulcrum scheduler, and it's kind of how some of those, how the Fulcrum scheduler reacts to new information and new data. So I'm going to close this job, complete it, and then actually switch my share really quick. To another scenario. Cool. Okay, great. So in this scenario that I'm kind of setting up here, we'll get into the scheduling algorithm and kind of how that works in Fulcrum. And really the purpose of our scheduler is, as Sunny kind of mentioned, to really solve that puzzle of all of these, operations that obviously need to be scheduled in the right order at the right time to kind of get everything out the door in the most efficient way possible. And so this obviously becomes more and more complicated the more jobs you're working with, the more amount of operations that you're working with. And so our system will kind of take all those pieces, parse them out, and kind of rearrange them in the right way for each particular machine. So in this example, I'm starting actually with a completely blank schedule. So we're starting at ground zero here actually. And we have 2 jobs that I'm actually going to schedule. So I have a job for this satellite, and it's due here on the 28th. And then I have another job for a rover. So kind of the same item we were looking at before. It's also due on the 28th. I'll kind of dig into the BOM on this a little bit, the bill of materials and everything. So you can see in this example, there's a little bit of a structure of hierarchy here. So we have to do some cutting, some milling, some welding, some assembly of the solar panel section. There's a lot of other buy items in here, and then there's some additional operation steps. So in Fulcrum, each of these bubbles that you're seeing, we call that an operation step. We call this sequence of all of those in order, the routing. So that's kind of the makeup of our satellite dish. And then if you look at our rover here, we have again a much more complicated BOM and routing structure, a lot of different sub-assemblies and things that kind of need to come together. So some of the key pieces of information we have an understanding of the operation time. So how long is it actually going to take to do this thing? And then we also know the order of operations. So what has to come first, what has to come second. Additionally, I won't really show this, but in the system setup, we also know the time of day that the shop is actually available, and how much capacity is actually available for a given day. And then we schedule around equipment. And so you'll see we also know an association between the operation and what equipment it can be done on, and really what subset of equipment in the shop it can be done on. And so those key pieces of information are what allows our scheduling algorithm to break all of these individual operations apart and kind of fill out our schedule in the right way. So we will go ahead and prove and schedule both of these jobs. So great. So now that those are both approved and ready to be scheduled, the scheduling system just broke all of those apart, took all of those individual operation steps, and stuck them on our schedule in an order. So to kind of orient you to our scheduler and what you're seeing here, so you have each column representing an individual piece of equipment. Can kind of abstract it as well. It doesn't have to be a piece of machinery necessarily. We have assembly station 1, assembly stations 3 in this particular example. And then each card that you see here is actually representative of an individual operation step. So kind of relates directly back. Here's the cutting step for this rover. That's going to relate directly back to what you're seeing on here as an individual, cutting step here. So for each of these, it kind of breaks it out and is scheduling everything in the right order. The other piece of data that you'll see on here is the backlog. So we have 10 hours of work in this example. It's scheduled out through the 27th. And here we'll see kind of how that rover specifically is scheduled. So it's going to start on Friday, and then it's going to end on Tuesday the 28th. So we're getting everything out on time. Nothing here in this example is late. And then here we have the satellite is starting on Friday, and then it is also getting out on the 28th. So so the things that I'll highlight really though with the scheduler are how it reacts to new pieces of information. And how it's taking that as things change and automatically doing this sort of reshuffle for you. So we will take our satellite and say, okay, this due date has changed, so let's shift this to tomorrow. And so, yeah, previously this was scheduled to end on the 28th. So now it says, all right, well, this is late. Now it's due on the 24th. And we'll go and reschedule this. And so you'll see that shift. So now you can see, all right, well, that one's due earlier. We need to get it out earlier. Shifted priorities in all of these different, on all of our different resources. And I can see the satellite is now, the first thing that's basically scheduled, and most of our resources are everywhere that it needs it. And then it's now scheduled to start on the 24th and be out the door by the 24th. So yeah, again, shifting to that new piece of information. The other sort of input that'll kind of highlight is how it also will shift to new pieces of data around the priority level of things. So as priorities shift, we can make updates there too. So I'm going to go back to, this is our rover, and let's just say this is really high priority now. And we'll again reschedule this. It'll recalculate everything. And now you see the rover come actually to the top of the list at the expense of pushing that satellite out. So now the planetary rover is, again, you can see it's essentially consuming the resources of the first thing scheduled at every single machine. And then if we click in here, we can see it's now scheduled to start on the 24th. It's still going to take us till the 28th to get it out the door. But that's going to have to push out this, the satellite, and we'll no longer be able to get it done by the 24th. So the priority levels and the due dates of everything are really what's driving what order we end up shuffling the entire sort of schedule into. There's a lot of different pieces, obviously, that go into this scheduling algorithm in different ways. We can configure a lot of different things. There's just two more really big ones that I'll highlight of very common, situations that may come into play, and how, the scheduler can kind of react to those really quickly. So another common one is obviously, a machine goes down, something comes offline, and we want to reshuffle and sort of account for that scenario. So I'm just jumping into my equipment list and basically saying, all right, well, we have a bunch of stuff scheduled on this CNC milling area. We actually have a second one that isn't being used right now. But let's say our main CNC mill actually goes down. We'll mark it out of service. Okay. And then we'll come over here and reschedule this. So you saw it kind of pop off the screen and sort of that red sort of flashed there. So now it's moved over, kind of out of view, it's out of service, and it automatically just rescheduled those operations onto other pieces of equipment that can actually do that work. And then the kind of last piece of very common, data sort of change or information change that I'll highlight on this is material availability and material, basically just an understanding of when orders are coming in, what your lead times are, and how that should then influence the rest of the schedule. And so right now, I have that setting turned off, so it's not accounting for any of our material availability right now. So we'll go in and we'll adjust that. So we'll say, let's account for material availability. Great. And then we'll come back in here and reschedule. So you kind of see visually even it just sort of shoved everything down. And that's because we don't actually have a lot of this material on hand to start some of these things. So now if I look at my rover schedule, it's still starting on the 24th. But it's now ending on the 30th. Previously, it was ending on the 28th. And then if I look at that satellite, it's not starting now until the 7th and ending on the 7th, and so of July. So there's likely some long lead time type of material in this that we don't have and haven't ordered. So as we get more information about the purchase orders, when they're expected to be received, if they're delayed, this schedule will continue to refresh and update so that you're getting an actual, realistic look at when things can actually be started and when they'll actually be finished based on all of that information. And then, the last piece that's really kind of tied to that'll highlight, and then we'll kind of just open it up for different questions and things, is purchasing planning. And so this is giving us our schedule based on what's incoming, what we currently have on hand, and a lot of different factors. But our purchasing planning module will actually tell us, and I need to switch, sorry, the screen share really quick. There we go. So the purchasing planning will actually answer the question of what do we need to buy right now, and how much, and when, essentially. So let's move over to there. Cool. Okay, so there's kind of a lot happening on this page, so I'll orient around it a little bit, but essentially it's a list of just everything that the system is recommending that you purchase right now. So again, it should be answering that question, what do I need to buy, and sort of when, and it's really meant to take that guesswork and anxiety out of, do I have everything or not? And so, kind of looking down this list, it's giving us this to buy amount recommended here. And the couple of really key data points that we're looking at to come up with that recommendation is, for all of these items, what do we currently have on hand? So in this example, this is sort of wire. There's different pieces of metal and things here. So we don't really have anything on hand. So what do we have on hand? What's incoming? So what do we already have coming in on existing purchase orders, if anything? What do we need on the current jobs? So this is also being influenced by the schedule. So we know when we're scheduled to start that particular job, and so we can use that information to backdate. Well, if you're going to start it by this date, then you're going to need to purchase by this date. So we have an understanding of the vendor lead time that's going into that purchasing suggestion as well, and that purchase by date. And so we roll all that in with a couple other pieces like minimum on hand information or minimum order quantity information from the vendor, and then come up with a recommended buy amount. And we can also sort of filter that down to say even more specifically, what do I need to make sure I buy it by today or tomorrow? Like, these are the things I need to purchase by tomorrow in order to hit some of these production schedules that we have in place. So I'm going to filter it down, and then from here, it's really just a launching point to start to create purchase orders. So in this example, there's only one other item by that vendor, but it'll also kind of group things up by vendors. So if I have a lot of things to purchase from Ryerson, I'll say, all right, here's all the other items you buy from them. You can go and create a PO, and then kind of just go back to the list and keep kind of working down that list. So yeah, covered kind of 3 different types of scenarios there, but really trying to highlight some of the spots where Fulcrum is trying to bring that robustness. So doing some complicated calculations and adjusting as we find new data, but hopefully in a way that's also really digestible, easy to use, and like Sunny kind of mentioned, feels more empowering than scary or sort of confusing. Oh. So with that, I will maybe turn it back to Sunny, and we can field if there's any, questions or anything.
Yeah, thank you, Alex. I'm going to throw this slide up just in case anybody has questions that they haven't asked in the chat that they want to get in contact with us later. As Sunny said, you can reach out to anyone at Fulcrum. We're happy to talk to you. We love Fulcrum, so we're happy to talk to you about it and answer any questions that you might have. You can also get additional information at our website, fulcrumpro.com. So I do have a couple questions that I'm going to send over to you guys. So the first question, Alex, I'm going to send to you, which is, what if two operations can happen at the same time? How do we manage that within Fulcrum?
Yeah, so that's totally fine. That can happen. You can set them up in the bill of materials as two parallel steps, and that just lets the system know like these can both start at the same time, and they can be scheduled at the exact same time. So it doesn't have to be completely linear like that. Some operations can be scheduled to start at the same time.
Okay. Great. Sunny, how do we handle if operators aren't used to using tablets, or how do we help them incorporate that into their regular business without too much disruption?
At this point in time, our research and our experience shows that even people who aren't that comfortable with technology are still able to use a smartphone to send a text message or to browse the internet. And with that skill level alone, almost all of our users feel really comfortable using the product that we've developed for them. For that reason, the tablet-based job tracker just looks very different than every other part of our application. And the reason it looks very different is because we want to design it primarily for ease of use. And we reduce some of the density of information on purpose to make it friendlier, less scary, easier to orient it. And most of the time, the only things that the user is able to do are the things they need to do. So that effect makes them feel pretty comfortable. When we are demoing customers or we're going through the sales process, we oftentimes invite the operators to come on the demo and just look at it. And that in and of itself should be the level of proof that you need to feel comfortable in letting them explore the product itself without any fear of them not wanting to adopt it.
Sure. We have a question as well about what's our ideal client size? Are there people that we work better with? Do we have limitations there?
The majority of our customers are below 1,000 employees, with the large portion of the lion's share somewhere in the 10 to 25 person range. We have a lot of customers that are very successfully using the product that have just a few employees in the shop floor, and we do have some that are in the many thousands of employees. But typically speaking, what we see at least right now is in that 20 to 100, let's say, range. We do handle assembly line type jobs. We have functionality in our product that is for what we call continuous flow, where the second operation can start after just one piece or two pieces or whatever you set up in the system is done. And that allows for a sequential line of assembly line employees to do a bunch of things in order and track the progress of that entire build, if you will, or assembly. So we do have customers that are doing that as well. For us, our mission is to create this network of manufacturing and to support all of manufacturing. So for us, we are filtering out functionality to build far more about workflow than it is about the type of manufacturers that we're working with. So we have glass manufacturers and rubber extruders, as well as CNC machine shops and sheet metal fabricators and assemblers, as well as component manufacturers. So all of those fit very well within Fulcrum.
Great. And another question about whether we can integrate with laser counting systems for output measurements.
Depending on the system, it is possible. We have a few of our customers that are doing that. More often than not, that data just goes right into the job, so it doesn't even pop up in the interface. There are some ways that we're trying to more formally integrate with some of these platforms. So for machine data, we've written an integration with Machine Metrics, and we're working with a few other partners as well to get data directly from machines. And from these counting systems, there's usually SCADA systems that you have to plug into, and we can pull information out of that as well. But in general, the vast majority of our customers are parsing that information somewhere else and not pulling it in through Fulcrum. So while we can do it, it's something that we need to really understand very well before we agree to it.
Sure. Alex, a couple of scheduler questions. So if an operator is sick or on vacation and doesn't show up, how do we account for that in the schedule?
Yeah, there's some different ways to adjust a couple of things on the fly. I can just quickly screen share again. Let's pull it back up. Yeah, so this is back to our schedule that we're looking at. So kind of from here, here's our shift information. So if we're running overtime or there's a shorter shift or something, we can adjust those here. We can also change how many pieces of equipment we can schedule to at the same time. And so that's really kind of answering that question of, well, someone isn't here, we're staffed down. We abstract it more to like the equipment level, since sometimes, multiple people or one person could run multiple machines or something like that, and say, all right, well, what does that actually mean for our, machine capacity, and save that, and then we can, refresh everything. So, yeah.
Okay. Is there a limit to how many discrete jobs we could handle effectively within Fulcrum?
For us, from a performance standpoint, the way that the product is architected, it's more of a question of how many resources we need to grab. So we can scale out the product to use more compute power pretty easily now. We've continued to refine our tenancy model, which is just a way to say how do we host and use the data that's in the system. And so depending on how many there are, if there's tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, it still is theoretically supportable. We haven't seen that, but we've certainly had customers that have had thousands, if not tens of thousands of discrete concurrent jobs, and we've been able to crunch through those fairly effectively. So I think the most direct answer is I don't know what the limit is. We haven't really hit something where we couldn't compute it. We'll continue to test it every day as we get larger and larger customers. But for now, there isn't anything that we haven't been able to handle.
Okay. And then we've got another question here about if there are features that allow the system to measure performance of scheduled time versus actual, and if so, can they help us make improvements to the scheduler so that it's kind of learning how things work?
I think the machine learning aspect of our product is something that we're really excited about, but to be extremely direct and clear, we're certainly not even close to the scope where true machine learning is going to be able to help. There are certainly things about the scheduler that we adjust and augment on a weekly basis sometimes when we find new ways to slice and dice the information to increase the performance of the scheduler. But in order for machine learning to really work, we would need thousands and thousands and thousands of shops that are consistently and concurrently scheduling every single day. We're getting there, and we have the skill and expertise internally to turn that on and to build it whenever we need it. And we're getting there a lot faster than we expected. But I don't want to throw any buzzwords around and talk like other startups that pretend that they have functionality that they don't actually have. But true machine learning takes large volumes of data that we're gathering right now and using with our customers, but we won't really have the benefit from it until we have far more data than we have now.
Sure. Sunny or Alex, you touched on this briefly, but we do have a question about what types of modules we have within Fulcrum and kind of how that works. I know we looked a lot at the production side of things, so if you want to maybe talk through some of the other pieces of Fulcrum.
Yeah, I won't get too much into like the application trying to like go through each of them, but essentially we have we're capturing orders, so we could do quoting, sales order entry that takes us all the way into then the production process. So the things that you saw today with scheduling and then the production management pieces, capturing data from the shop floor, like the job tracking piece of things, through to the sort of like purchasing side of it. So what do we need to buy, managing purchase orders, receiving things in, to then shipping things out. So shipping and then invoicing, we're not an accounting platform, so we integrate with accounting platforms. We are not accounting platforms. So that's where we kind of cut it off. But we do other things like inventory management. You can do stock takes. There's other forms and things related to quality control and CRS, CAPAs, that type of thing, and some other tools we didn't hit on either to help, similar to purchasing planning, but help plan out the production of anything that you build to stock, like subcomponents or standard products, things like that.
Okay. And then another question just about, we talked about the scheduler being pretty adaptive. Is the rest of Fulcrum built to be adaptive like that as well?
I think in general, our focus is on making sure that we get really deep on one particular opinion of how things should operate and flow through the system. There's a huge amount of configurability, though, throughout the entire product, whether or not you sell blanket orders to customers and have those types of agreements. If you have price breaks that are by the customer, by the item type, or just for the item itself. Some of our customers build to stock, some of them build to order, some of them engineer to order, some of them just manufacture to order. We want to support every one of those workflows, so we can configure the product to remove things that are too cluttery or don't apply to that particular business. But we can add them back in so that we can support just about everyone. I would say that within that, there are some pieces of configuration that allows our customers to adapt. But there are some times where we have very strong opinions about how inventory is handled, or how stock takes are handled, about how inventory evaluations are handled. We have good reasons, and we're always willing to take the time to explain them. But there's a mixture of both of those.
Okay, great. We are about at time here. So if there's any other questions, feel free to throw those in the chat. If not, again, our contact information is on the screen as well as our website. So please reach out to us if you have any other questions. We are happy to talk to you. And thank you for joining today's live stream. We'll stick around for another couple of minutes here in case any other questions come through.